Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for these issues. So, I am going to collect some old videos that I have done, kind of remaster them a little bit, and repost them as one video. We're going to do Classic X-Men 1 through 5. Now, these are issues that I have covered before, so you may hear certain things spoken as if, they were new or not. I apologize. As I tried to edit these videos, it's just a one-man operation, a one-man show. It's just me, so I'm not always able to get everything done. So in the listening of all these videos, I've covered a lot. I have a playlist. Feel free to check that out. I choose Classic X-Men because this is how I was introduced to the X-Men, and I love these issues. So we're gonna do Classic X-Men because it just creates more exposition. You may hear me say several more times as I tried again. I edited as much as I could, but so certain times I may end up repeating myself. I apologize 100% for that. I did the best that I could when I put these videos together, but so we're gonna be looking at Classic X-Men #1. As I mentioned before, or the Classic X-Men, as I mentioned before, I have these issues, but I also have the facsimile edition of Giant Size X-Men #1, which we're also going to look at. And then we're also going to look at something else that is going to be included with this. There was an like a redoing of Giant Size X-Men #1 that was drawn by a whole bunch of different artists. We're going to be looking that as well. So, all right, great cover by Arthur Adams here. This cover is iconic. I absolutely adore this cover, and I don't know how to describe my love for this comic except that this should be how they're all done. These were all the X-Men up to that moment. It's just a wonderful cover. So this is the Giant Size X-Men #1. That is the origin of it. So it kind of gives this was taken from the Classic X-Men when it was re-released in a trade paperback. And so of course this was a frontispiece kind of giving you of who's who and what. So another look at that. That's just absolutely gorgeous. All right. And so Second Genesis. So the Classic X-Men started here. It didn't start the way the original Classic X-Men story started. So we have Scott Summers coming through, Professor Charles Xavier's school for gifted youngsters on a sunny spring morning when one era ends and another begins. And he comes running and goes, "Professor, I'm back. This is a most unique institution with most unique students, among whom is Scott Summers, perhaps most widely known as the leader of the X-Men." And Professor Xavier yells, "Cyclops." So this part is done by John Bolton. This is Chris Claremont writing. Okay, I know Chris Claremont is not, but this is how Classic X-Men begun. Where are the others? What happened to the X-Men? And then telepathically, "Open your mind to me, lad. That will be more efficient than you're telling me verbally. Like his people, Charles Xavier is a mutant, born with a power that sets him forever apart from the mainstream of humanity. his gift is telepathy, the ability to read others' thoughts as well as project his own. And through his Cyprobe, he relives the last few days of Cyclops' life. An extraordinary mutant presence had been detected on the South Pacific island of Krakoa, and the team had been sent to investigate. They landed without incident, but then suddenly, and you see Polaris here, behind us, look, and then Havoc says, everybody scatter, get moving before, and I love Professor Xavier kind of in the middle here, so you can see that it's through him. John Bolton is such a good artist as well. Cyclops never saw what hit him. His next recollection was walking aboard the X-Men Stratos jet alone, its controls locked on course for home. Moreover, his deadly optic blasts were no more. However hard he tried, he could not fire them. So, the power was a curse from the moment it appeared. Now, at last, he was free. Professor, why are you looking at me like that? Your eyes, Scott, they're glowing. Quickly, lad, don your protective lenses. No, not again. Don't let this happen again, as his optic blast goes through here. Your optic powers have returned with a vengeance. And this shadow here almost looks like Venom. Careful, Scott. Keep your eyes closed while I bind them tight. Thank goodness your body is impervious to the beam's force. Your optic blasts have somehow been amplified to a considerable degree. I'll have to modify your ruby quartz visor to contain them. But Professor, what about the X-Men? We can't. And so Professor X says, one problem at a time, my boy. You get yourself well. Let me worry about the rest. So it says here later, this is the moment I knew would someday come. In a way long dreaded, my mutant cerebro has located those I sought. Once I summon them, though, nothing will ever be the same again for the X-Men and for the school, for better or worse. And so we get Cyclops in the danger room, and the Professor X says he's practicing with his new visor, and he projects his thoughts. How are you progressing, Scott? Fine, sir. The visor works like a charm. There is a bitter undertone to his voice. Is something bothering you, lad? And Cyclops says, what do you think? I believed my nightmare was over, that miraculously my eyes were healed, and I could maybe live a normal life. I should have known better. And Xavier says, yes, you should have. I wish I could walk. You cannot conceive of how I hate my wheelchair, of how I envy you X-Men. I cope, I endure because I must. Yielding the alternative despair, self-pity is unthinkable. And Cyclops says, I'm sorry, sir. It's just that sometimes I feel so lost, so scared. I wonder what I am without the X-Men. They're my family, and the thought of losing them, that's worse than growing up an orphan and never having one. At least then I didn't really know what I was missing. I understand, Xavier says, and then he thinks. There exists within him such a fundamental sense of betrayal that walks hand in hand with a subconscious certainty that he will always be abandoned by those he loves. Professor, the X-Men are still in danger. When do we start the rescue mission? And Xavier says, first, I have to get you back in shape, Cyclops. Now comes the next step. Over the years, I have been establishing a roster of candidates for a backup team. I intend on summoning them. And he says, is that a smart idea, bringing total strangers into the school, says Cyclops? Under the circumstances, have we an alternative? And so this is where Giant Size X-Men actually started. So that was supplemental material. So we now get the Giant Size X-Men. And so these people are chasing a Nightcrawler here. They're saying, this way, the monster is this way, and Nightcrawler says, monster is it? The fools. It is they who are monsters, they with their mindless prejudices. Perhaps things would be simpler, safer if I had stayed with I don't know. It was a carnival, and it's German. So, but the life of a carnival freak is not for me, not for Kurt Wagner. In French, the W has a V sound. Let them come if they must. Let them try to kill me. At least if I die, it will be as a man. You can see him jump and moving up. We've got him. Come down, monster. Come down or we'll burn you. And Nightcrawler's like, go away, you fools. I have done nothing. This looks so cool. And so they're tossing all their stuff. And so Nightcrawler has had enough, and he hurls at the people and pounces on them, and they are going to basically kill him. They're like, we have him, quickly bring the stake. And so they have him trapped. Now, monster, we will be rid of you. Now we will. And suddenly, stop, says Xavier. And they all stop. And he's psychically controlling them, introduces himself. Uh, um, he says, you did this to them, but how? Why? And he said, I heard you say you'd come here to learn. My friend, I am a teacher. I run a school for gifted youngsters such as you, a school for mutants. Mutants, yes, I have heard of that word. You are a mutant, Kurt. I can help you find your true potential. Can you help me be normal? After tonight's misfortune, Kurt, would you truly want to be? Perhaps not. I only want to be a whole Kurt Wagner. If you can make that me, if you can make me that teacher, I will go with you. And so now we're in Quebec, Canada. We're going to see Wolverine's second appearance. Yes, technically it's his fourth appearance, but it's his second full appearance after Hulk 181 here. Len Wein is the writer of the original Giant Size X-Men, and he was also the writer of Hulk 181. So Wolverine is one of his creations. And so they're waiting for you in the conference room, sir. Let them wait. It's good for their soul. And so Wolverine walks in. All right, gents, I'm here. Now, who's this bigwig you want me to meet? And Xavier says, I'm the bigwig, Wolverine. And he says, Charles Xavier at your service. Am I supposed to be impressed? Apparently, the top brass is impressed, Wolverine. All I know is that Professor is here to make you some sort of offer. That's not how the government works, but hey, it's the 70s. Oh, an offer. Okay, Prof, you've piqued my curiosity. What's the deal? I'll come straight to the point then. I know of your recent battle with the Hulk, and moreover, I know of your powers. You, my friend, are a mutant, and I have need of mutants. Desperate need. But what about my position here? And he says, I'm offering you a chance to become a free agent, a chance to learn to put your powers to their greatest use. And he says, a chance to get out from under the red tape and rigmarole, eh? All right, Professor, you find yourself a man. And this guy's like, what? Not so fast, fella. Hey, this is the Canadian Army. Who cares? The government has invested a great deal of time and money turning you into what you are now. You try walking out on us and I'll have you locked up. Uh-huh. It seems you didn't get my meaning, friend. This is still a free country. And you see snicked. And this is the first time you actually see him pop his claws. During Hulk, the claws were always out because they were apparently part of his gloves or whatever. They hadn't quite designed this thing where the claws actually popped in and out. So I'm resigning my commission, effective immediately, unless of course you have any further objections. I didn't think so. Believe me, you haven't heard the last of this. That will actually come, about 15, 16 issues from now when Alpha Flight gets him. But it's a story for another day. Anytime you want me, you know where to come looking. Come on, Prof, let's go. And so now they're going to meet with Banshee, and he's going to ask him for his help. I'm kind of going to move this along here. And so up in Kenya, they're offering tribute to their goddess, who happens to be Storm, and she controls the weather. And so she does what the people want. And beautiful. Ororo is just beautiful. So she makes this rain, and the people are happy. And suddenly here you see a most impressive display of Ororo. Truly beautiful. Who are you? What business have you in Ororo's land? I'm called Xavier, and I have come to make you an offer. I pray you will not refuse. An offer. What have you to offer a goddess? And he basically gives her the spiel. You're a mutant. I teach mutants. And so, all right, I will come with you. Perhaps the time has come for me to leave the nest at last. And so we're in Japan, where he's going to get Sunfire. And Sunfire's not interested, but eventually he does take his offer. Of course, it'll be short lived because he's gonna leave immediately the next issue. So I don't think Chris Claremont really cared to have him on the team. And so we're going to Russia, and so we got Colossus here, and sees the tractor who's going to Ileana, and he uses his power and grabs his sister out of the way, but instead of keep running, he somehow stops in front of the tractor, and so he ends up destroying that poor thing here. And Professor X says, I need to talk to you. How he got into Russia without all the red tape, he probably used his mutant powers. And so he offers him to go and says, we need you. And the parents are like, well, do as your heart tells you. And so he's like, well, I guess I'm leaving. So, all right. And so now we are in Arizona, and we see Thunderbird, John Proudstar, where he's wrestling this bison. So the reason they killed Thunderbird is because him and Colossus basically have the same power, which is super strength. So they didn't need two people with super strength. Colossus had the steel thing, so they keep Colossus instead. So it would have been neat what would have happened if they would have kept him, but you already have Wolverine also as a troublemaker. You didn't need two troublemakers. You didn't, so I get what they had, why they ended up having to kill him. So, and so he's not gonna do it. And then Professor X says, I offer you a chance to help the world, and you turn your back on me, then perhaps what they say is true. Perhaps the Apache are all frightened, selfish children. And then he's like, whoa, you don't do that. Nobody calls me a coward. And then he basically, all right, and joins the X-Men on basically because he called him a coward. So, all right, so here we go. All right. And so they all get their costumes here. Colossus is like, in all my life, such clothing as this I have never seen. And Storm is like, this costume is beautiful and fit perfect, but how did you? And Professor X says, I obtained them from Reed Richards. Now I'm gonna show you what ended up happening. What was in the original, but Classic X-Men after that went back to this, and so Banshee says, "We're here, Xavier, all dolled up, pretty as you please. Now tell us why," says Thunderbird. Like, I can't believe he didn't tell him at first. And Cyclops says, the X-Men have disappeared, Thunderbird. It's our job to find them. And the mutant responsible and deal with them. So Chris Claremont beautifully tells that whole story in just a couple of pages. It's amazing. And so it says here, within hours, the jet has retraced its flights halfway around the globe. The new X-Men split into teams and begin their search. It is soon rewarded. From the moment they land, they're under constant attacks by the island's flora and fauna. Only after freeing the captive X-Men do they discover that their foe, the mutant they thought, is Krakoa. The entire island is a conscious and malevolent entity, a colony creature that sustains itself by draining the life essence, the special energies of other mutants. That was why Cyclops had been released as bait, a Judas goat to lure more victims into Krakoa's grasp. And you see Professor X monitoring all that situation here. But X-Men, old and new, prove more than a match as they combine their powers to hurl the island into deep space. And so battered, a little bloody but victorious, our heroes set off course to New York. Sorry, we don't have seats for everyone. The Stratojet wasn't designed to carry so many passengers, which brings me to our next little problem. What are we doing with 13 X-Men? So, beautifully, he basically told everything that happened in Giant Size X-Men. He basically told like 20 pages into actually in one panel. Gee, it's amazing. So, all right. And so Classic X-Men continues here. and then we're gonna go back after. So, Angel's question is rhetorical, meant mostly as fun, but it weighs heavily on Charles Xavier's mind long into that fateful night. The original team were youngsters, but when we began, completely unversed in the use of their power. My task was as much to teach them those basics as mold them into an effective fighting force. These new X-Men are older with far more experience. They know what they can do. It will be a considerable challenge to integrate two such disparate groups. I sense a great many thoughts. Everyone is still up despite the hour. I wonder how they're faring. Havoc and Polaris are clearing the dinner dishes. And so what's the plan? We stayed because we were needed. With this whole crowd, we aren't needed anymore. Scott's the superhero in the family. I have other plans. And then he goes, I've seen and heard enough. They both plan to return to school to complete their degrees. Excellent. But what of Cyclops? He's upstairs with Jean Grey. Banshee's playing some wicked piano in the common room. Lover, what say we join the party? And he says, I'd like to, Jean, really. But I want to finish my after-action report in our encounter with Krakoa while the impressions are still fresh. Our victory was due as much to luck as skill. More importantly, I shouldn't have let you and the others be captured, let alone so easily. And Jean says, that wasn't your fault. As leader, it is my responsibility to anticipate such threats and be ready to cope with them. Mistakes like that could get someone killed next time. Fine, but can't this wait? No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. I see it can't. If you change your mind, you know where to find me, she says. And so she's outside, and she goes, but he won't. Probably never has, probably never will. He takes his job so seriously, as if it was the only meaning thing in his life. I know it isn't. I'm a telepath. I've seen his thoughts. I know how much he loves me. It's just so hard for him to express it. But for us to truly be together and stay together, he'll have to learn. And so Xavier continues here. Poor Jean, I wish I could help, but in this matter, it is not my place to interfere. Um, and so I knew Banshee was fond of country and western music. Evidently, that applies to Dixieland as well. You're an artist, then, Peter Mi Boyo? Says Banshee. True, I draw tovarish, but not very well. These are for my little sister Ileana, a record of my adventures. What are you playing, Comrade Cassidy? I have never heard of such music. This laddie buck is good old bougie woogee classic roadhouse jazz. And the name's Sean. Not bad, my friend. Both Banshee piano playing and the sketch you should give yourself more credit. Who said that as he gets freaked out. Bojimo is like, my God, or something like that, and he rips his shirt. Nightcrawler, for shame, Rasputin. Is that any way to react to a teammate? What's the matter? Never seen a demon teleport from place to place before? And Colossus like, niet, and he's like, another shirt ruined, and my mother's not here to repair the damage or knit me a new one. Perhaps Comrade Professor Xavier can provide me clothes that will not tear. And he says, are you a demon? And so Iceman says, he sure looks the part. Hey, Robert, but appearance can be deceiving, don't you know? Good point. This wouldn't be the first time the X-Men have been conned by supposed friends who turned out to be enemies. We risk our lives to save yours, Iceman. Doesn't that earn us the benefit of the doubt? And he says, pull up a chair, Robert, and join the fun. Kurt, toss him a bottle. And he says, I'm not old enough to drink. What's wrong, comrade? I'm not your comrade, Risky. This is America. I know where I am, Iceman. But suddenly I ask myself why I came here. Are we not all X-Men? And Bobby's like, you clowns figure you can waltz in and take over like the rest of us don't exist? I'm an X-Men. So are Angel and Marvel Girl and Cyclops. Like our feelings, our opinions don't matter. And Banshee's like, we're not the ones to take anyone's place, Boyo. We want to belong as much, but we don't get a chance to prove ourselves. Or is your mind made up? You've seen what we look like and where we come from, and you don't like it. Is that And so Claremont is basically putting in that the same thing. They look different, all that kind of stuff. So So Nightcrawler says here, I resemble a monster, therefore I am one. You object to Peter's government and condemn him by his association. You're all for mutant rights, but only for those mutants who fit your aesthetic and political criteria. A most charitable attitude, heard Drake, most enlightened. That's not what I said. You're putting words in my mouth. Then prove me wrong. Take my hand and Peter and welcome us with an open heart as the professor did. He slams the door. It was a mistake to come. We will never be accepted. In the morning, I will return home. And Nightcrawler basically says, "Nope, I'm gonna stay here." And so is Banshee, and Peter's like, "I'm not sure, but I will try." So Nightcrawler's tired of running away. So all right, so here is Thunderbird. The original team has some history, a lot to be proud of. Won't be easy for them to share their place with a bunch of hotshot upstarts, but to truly belong, as I once did to my tribe, to be brothers the way the grunts were in the outfit during the war, that'd be worth. He says, "Hi, Esme. This mansion is pretty big. If you're not too busy, how about sharing a few of its secret?" He's like, "You want to explore? Go right ahead. Everything's labeled. You can't get lost, assuming you can read. No need for an attitude, hombre. Just trying to be friendly." And he says, "I'm not interested. Don't you understand, Buster? I don't want any of you here. Not as X-Men. This is our house, our lives. You're honing in. You haven't the right. You don't belong." And attacks him with his eyes. "Why don't you take the hint and go? Professor asked us, Iceman. That gives us the right. We're here. We mean to stay. You can't handle that, boy. That's your problem." As he rips ahead. So Jean Grey is like, "Oh, Bobby, people's minds are an open book to me, but knowledge doesn't always mean understanding. Everything happening too fast, leaving us no time or opportunity to cope. A week ago, the original X-Men were the only X-Men. Tonight, we're outnumbered by a band of strangers. We're not unique anymore. Perhaps no longer even needed. I wonder if that's bad." And suddenly there's Wolverine here. "Lady as lovely as you should ever frown." And so she's like, "Wolverine, you startled me." "One of the things I do best," he says. "How'd he come so close without me spotting him? I wasn't even aware of his thoughts." And he goes, "Brew." And she's like, "No, thank you." And Wolverine's like, "Kind of man I am, darling. I know what I want the minute I lay eyes on it. And what Wolverine wants, he gets. Heart's pounding, Jeannie. You breathing awfully fast gives me the impression that this feeling's mutual." And she says, "You are mistaken." He says, "Wanna bet?" And she says, "Wolverine, no, please. This is a mistake." And so I love how John Bolton draws women. Uh, Storm is now flying. It says the colors are different from what she knows, but basically the sky's the sky. And so here's Angel, and you tell me what a gorgeous angel like you is doing in this place. And she says, "Should that not be my question, Angel, since you are far more beautiful than I?" And he's like, "Whatever." And she says, I state the obvious. I hope I'm not intruding. I saw you take off and gambled you wouldn't mind so company. It's nice to have someone to share the sky with. Sometimes it's no fun soaring alone." She says, "I agree. It is sad your friend Iceman is not so generous." He says, "He's a kid. He doesn't appreciate the possibilities the way I do." "What possibilities?" "You, Storm, me, us, making beautiful music together. A symphony of motion and emotion. I don't understand. It's something far better explained with deeds, not words, starting with a kiss." And then he's like, "What the? I knew it. I knew that little low-life roughneck was creep was gonna be trouble. Angel, what's wrong? From what my ego keen eyes can see, sweet's plenty, but nothing I can't handle." So Angel basically saw Wolverine, and he's going to get him. He goes, "You heard the lady, shrimp. Back off." And tosses him. "You okay, Jean? Did that creep hurt you?" And Jean's like, "Are you insane, Warren? We were just talking." And she's like, "Keep your filthy hands to yourself, fella. She's spoken for, and even if she wasn't, she's too good for the likes of you." And Wolverine snaps his claws here. "Red's a grown woman, Flyboy. That decision's hers. But if you want to call me out, I'll be more than happy to oblige." And so she puts him. She's like, "Wolverine, Angel, stop. My telekinetic push should keep them apart," she says. "You made me mad, Angel. Now pay the price." And he hurls at it. And they're like, "He's going berserk. I can't hold him. Warren, take off." And then suddenly that lightning gets him, and it was Storm. and she creates a rain to like their emotions. She's like, that little guy's crazy. He tried to claw me with those claws. How in heaven's name could Professor X have brought a lunatic like that into the school? How can he expect us to work by his side to trust him? He's ready to and willing to slaughter um, us as fight our foes. Well, that's basically he did it. So you condemn easily, Angel, considering you struck the first blow. When somebody tries to kill me, lady, one chance is all they get. And she goes, go away, Red. Let me be. You heard him. Right, Gene, take the run at his word. You don't need his grief. And she's like, Flatboy's right. I really am bad news, as crazy as they come. And I do kill. And Gene says, I'm not afraid. And Wolverine says, you should be. I feel your pain, Wolverine. You're the anguish, the body, and the spirit. I want to help. So does Professor Xavier. Otherwise, why bring you here? I'm glad I met you. Welcome to the X-Men, she says. And so, dawn already, huh? Too much due to little time. And so Jean says, no way to live. Agreed, the never-ending curse of a workaholics. You haven't slept, Jean? Not a wink. And she says, I monitored your encounter with Wolverine. I'm very proud of the way you dealt with him and Warren. I know Wolverine has rough edges. He may well prove to be the most difficult and dangerous student I've ever taught, but I believe the reward is worth the risk. Given time and care, he has the potential to become a keystone of the team. Um, and Jean says, I'm glad. I really hope he works out. I won't be here to watch. And Xavier's like, the conflict strikes so deeply. Oh, Professor, you have no idea. I thought the patterns of my life were all neatly, properly ordered, but the one look from Wolverine has smashed them to bits. I love Scott with all my heart, but I also can't deny and the attraction between me and Wolverine. The longer we're together, the more afraid I am of yielding. But that's only part of how I feel. I nearly died battling Krakoa, as I have on a score of occasions since you formed the X-Men. But tonight suddenly I found myself wondering why I keep coming back for more. What if my own dreams and plans for love, for a family, must they be sacrificed on this terrible altar of responsibility? And Xavier says, Dear Jean, is that what you truly believe the X-Men purpose is? Have I failed you so utterly so? And she's like, no, I don't know anymore, anything. There's so much I want to see and do, the whole world to explore that that know nothing about mutants and aliens and supervillains. Lately, I find myself thinking of this house as a cloister, even a prison. I'm bound here, trapped. And she says, how can humanity come to trust us, Professor, if we forever hide behind these walls, afraid to discover if we make it on our own? And Xavier says, it can't. I never meant to keep you here, Jean, any of you. Much as I will miss you, all of my students must follow the dictates of heart and conscience. And if that means leaving the X-Men in school, so be it. Were I to deny that need, that honest choice, no matter how noble my reasons, I'd be no better than Magneto. I wish you well. There will always be a place should you ever need. Don't hesitate. And she's like, oh, hush, please hush. I'll always be a thought away. Remember your own lesson, Professor. A moment like this should never be considered an ending, but a new, wondrous beginning. And it says, and so it was. This actually concludes the classic X-Men portion. We're going to look at also the homage to Giant Size X-Men #1 here. This is all done by various people, so it was a tribute. So cover I think is Avi. I forgot his name. It's all in here. So Alex Ross does this portion here. And so let me show you that. Let me go back here. So this is of course the cover. And of course you knew the cover of the original because everybody's seen it. And of course this is the original page 1 here, which of course Alex Ross recreated here. And so here is all the stuff of who all does these things. So some people I will recognize, some people I won't. That's okay. And so here we go. Look at that. All right. So I should have started here. My bad. All right. Here we go. Oh, that is just gorgeous. So you remember here, this is the picking up of Nightcrawler, if you remember here. That is so cool. That is just flicking. And so each page is a different guy. This is Chris Samney. Oh, that is just gorgeous. Oh, this is cool. I probably haven't looked at this issue since I did these. This is, I think, Lin and Liu. This is a beautiful one. I like this one. This is pretty cool. I like this. I like sometimes you look at when people redraw these things, and it's nice that they use a different uh, like a different camera to put the same thing that they have shown so many different times, a different view. This looks awesome. Very cartoony here. And so here we go. So this is the part that was originally skipped. That Chris Claremont kind of just told the story in one part here. And so I'm just gonna show you this portion, and then I'll show you, um, or do you? I don't know. I don't know if you guys like it, uh, front and back or whatever. And so I'll just keep doing it like this. And so the original. This looks so awesome. It just, and look how young they look. They actually make them look younger than um in the 70s everyone looked old. See what I mean? Everybody looks old in the 70s. I love this. I really true. And so that is cool. I don't know if you guys got a chance to grab the when the tribute came, but I almost didn't get it, but then I was like, why not? See what I mean when I said Chris Claremont did that like in one panel? It's amazing because Chris Claremont is so wordy, yet he managed to do that whole thing in just one freaking panel. And so this looks really cool. You know, we've all seen the original so many times. It's just nice to see that other version of it. Just nice to see, like I said, other views. And you can tell that the old one used the old way everything had to be within. That's why the other one kind of ends in a um, the page went all the way to the bottom, whereas the new one doesn't here. So see the new one kind of. So that's pretty cool. Oh, you can definitely tell Photoshop is part of our worlds now. All right, about 13 pages left. So hopefully not too long left here. And not for nothing, but I don't know. I really like the new one. I like new styles. Uh, Poor little crabbies. I wonder what it would have been if Lin Wein would have started or would have stayed. Um, because Chris Claremont did such a great job. And so here we go. Like I said, the perspective changes. It just looks awesome. And so this looks awesome. Total digital art, but that looks great. And so all right, almost done. It's kind of funny now that they went back to the Krakoa era, which I hated. Did you guys like the Krakoa era? I know that um, they've they've left it now, but I just not a big fan of that era. This looks awesome. That's good. I didn't cover that part in the beginning because I knew that I would be showing you this, so I didn't want to double dip. And so, all right, 3 pages left, and this is just wonderful. I love that panel. That just looks so cool. This is so photorealistic in a way. It's a good interpretation of that panel there. But that's the only part about modern art that I don't like is that I really do miss pencil and ink. It just everything now is just the computer coloring, and I really miss pencil and ink. Say what you will about that old art, at least it was, I think, a little bit more, I don't know, human. And so we get to the last page here. What are we going to do with 13 X-Men? So, so there we go. And then we end the issue with the back cover because classic X-Men had back covers, and this cover by John Bolton is absolutely remarkable here as we see Angel charging head on and Wolverine of course making the moves on Jean Grey. Wonderful um cover here. All the classic X-Men for most of their run through until the Dark Phoenix saga, had a back cover and an extra story. So this officially ends the issue. Classic X-Men versus regular X-Men. Now, here's what kind of here's why I'm going all the way back. I already have done uh, Giant Size X-Men 1 through Classic X-Men, so I've showed people the three different versions of Giant Size X-Men 1. So I was going to just do the Dark Phoenix saga. But then I said, too much happened that leads up to it, so I decided to do John Spur's run. But then, too much actually has occurred, so I decided, let me just go back all the way to the beginning. So, like I said, I've already done Giant Size X-Men 1 / Classic X-Men 1, so I figured, let's just do these. And so Arthur Adams does this great cover here. Classic X-Men was how I got into know more about the X-Men. This is how I was introduced to these great stories. So Gil Kane and Dave Cockrum do the cover. Cockrum was the inker of this cover. And at this time, X-Men was the hot book, and these came out right during the Mutant Massacre. So the Mutant Massacre era is when Classic X-Men launched. So basically start off here with Professor X, and there's a mirror behind him, so this is his head, so that's why you're looking at everybody, so everybody's looking at themselves through a mirror. And so he's facing the reader, and then the mirror is behind him. So he's telling the X-Men how proud he is of how they handled Krakoa and how they performed great. And then the future, which Sunfire cuts him off, says there's no future with Sunfire in the X-Men. And he wants nothing to do with them. He only cares about Japan. He asks the rest of the X-Men if anybody else feels that way. Colossus is like, I don't know. And Storm is like, hey, we've only been together 2 days. I'll stay. Wolverine also agrees to stay. Sunfire basically insults them on the way out and tell them, don't bother me again, basically. And so he asks Banshee. Banshee's not sure. Cyclops convinces him. He's like, all right, I'll stay. And so Xavier thinks everything's good, but the original X-Men are going to leave. I like how Dave Cockrum puts him in the corner so he doesn't have to draw the wings. So he's like, what? And the old X-Men tell him, hey, we were kids when you took us. Now we're big boys. And, it's time for us to get out there. Wolverine is very different to how he is now. He was a little bit more gruff. He wasn't, as a character, he wasn't this likable sort of person. He's like, whatever. As you can see here, split us. Go ahead and leave, but just spare us a soap opera. X-Men doesn't take kindly to that. Wolverine's like, hey, I've never carved up an icicle before. Cyclops tells them, enough is enough. Havoc, who is Alex Summers, Scott's brother, tells him, what's he gonna do? And he doesn't know. He's unsure, so he ponders it throughout the night. The next day, he's still in his uniform, which they call a costume. I think that's funny. But he decided to stay. The part of the reason being is from up here is he can't control his eye beams. And just decides also that the new X-Men need him. Tells him she loves him and walks off. They all say goodbye. Cyclops like, all right, let's go. They're going to start training in the danger room. And tells them that the exercise is simple. Just got to walk across the room. Thunderbird's like, oh, all right, see ya. Then you kind of hear him, and then he's just booted out. And he lets them know this is a new page, by the way. I'll show you what the original page looked like, but these were put in for Classic X-Men, which is part of the reason I want to use Classic X-Men, because there's a lot more exposition, a lot of stuff that happens that builds to what will happen. So I wanted to do Classic X-Men instead of just showing you how these looked on the regular X-Men. So he kind of explains the danger room to them, and boom, there's a good here of Crump, and Wolverine's like, the kid better not be squished, but he is okay. So, and so, like, they're practicing the danger room, and this is also a new page. So we have, then now we go back to the original. This is then, we're back in the original. You can tell by the style, even though it's Dave Cockrum, this is a little bit more clean and refined, and this one's just a little bit more messy. So Thunderbird gets hit with a low-powered laser, and Cyclops kind of admonishes him, tells him, hey, if this would have been a real fight, you would be, you could have lost your leg. Thunderbird doesn't take kindly to that. He insults him, and Professor X uses his telepathy, tells Thunderbird to go to the infirmary, and he'll see Scott in the office, to which Cyclops you can see him there, Now this thought balloon was added for the Classic X-Men. It was not part of the original language, and so he's like, Thunderbird's kind of just like sabotaging himself. So throws shade at Cyclops, calls him a loser. Storm says he doesn't see a loser, sees a man. And then now we're in Professor X's office. Professor X tells him that the new X-Men are doing well, but he's like, between Wolverine and Thunderbird, it's just, he gets one under control and then the other one acts up, and it just takes all his time. He's not going to have any time for Jean Grey because, he's too busy with the X-Men, and what about his life? He doesn't know what to do. And Professor X needs him, but he doesn't want to force him to stay, but he really needs Cyclops to help guide these new X-Men. And then we have one more new page, which is this one right here. And the Classic X-Men just fills in a lot of gaps that were missing through the original issues. So she's giving Moira MacTaggert. This is Moira MacTaggert up in Scotland. And this is Ron Sinclair, who's Wolfsbane. And you'll know Wolfsbane from the New Mutants and X-Force. And then I think she went to X-Factor. So her father is a minister who's really mean and crotchety. One of those super conservative type ministers. And tells her to Rain to go back to the house. Moira comments on what a nasty person she is, but she gets a telegram from Charles Xavier, and he's sending for her after all these years. So it's a nice bit because she just, in the X-Men eventually, she just shows up with no explanation. So Chris Claremont is basically having a do-over and decides, hey, let's kind of put in some stuff to make the continuity fit a little bit. So we got one more new page. So Storm's flying around. She sees Thunderbird's about to make a huge leap, and she uses a gust of wind to fly him, or to force him to safety. She's like, what are you trying to prove? And he says, Wolverine made that jump. And he says, well, his bones can't break. And he's like, anything you can do, I can do, basically. And she just ponders why, and just asks him, why do you need to do things better than everybody else? He just kind of admonishes her and says, hey, that's my business. So in the original, so if we go back to this page where Thunderbird says, oh, where Thunderbird walks into the room and he spit out what it was, is the next page, nothing wrong with it. But you can see why Chris Claremont decided to pursue the other route of kind of breaking things up, allowing time to, simmer why it was. Because then it goes straight into the next chapter. Or, sorry, not the next chapter, but it goes to the part where he gets hurt. And then it goes into the next chapter after that. So, it's a nice. I agree with how this was done on Classic X-Men. So on Classic X-Men, we just kind of then go straight to the next. So this is where it would have picked up after Cyclops was sent to the office. So that whole part with Professor X was, sorry, with that Professor X wasn't in the original. So it went from there to here. So we're in Cheyenne Mountain with NORAD. That's, I think, it's a real place. I was going to say Fort Collins, but I think it's in Colorado Springs. So he's bringing in the mail here and gives Harris his package. He's like, I wasn't expecting anything. Opens it up and just gets a little device that says press me, and they all think it's some kind of joke. So they say, hey, why don't you press it? Don't press anything that says press me. So he presses it, which opens up a portal that bring in the XMen. So they quickly dispatch the people there, and he's calling for help. So help arrives, but the gorilla man here, Gort, takes care of them. And so Count Nefaria is there. He is who controls the XMen. Count Nefaria, I think this is the second time he had appeared in the I think X-Men in the 20s, but then he appeared here and they never appeared again with the X-Men. He's been with the Avengers, he's the Iron Man, he's done other things, but this was his last appearance with the as a X-Men enemy. So the Animan's like, hey, how are we gonna the army's coming, and he uses anesthetic gas because, hey, let's put them to sleep as opposed to killing them. So, and he wants revenge for his last defeat. So yeah, X-Men 22 and 23 were his last one. He had the Animen as a better group than what he used to have. And so he is going to begin his plan. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Cyclops is just pondering, which Nightcrawler comes in and just asks him about everything that went on and how it upset him. And Cyclops is like, it's my responsibility, ultimately. Professor X calls them and tells them, hey, go listen to this. And he basically demands a ransom from each country, and if he doesn't, he's going to launch the entire U.S. nuclear missiles at everybody. And so the Beast was with the Avengers during this time and basically says, hey, can the X-Men help? Because, the Avengers, we just too busy, can't handle it at this time. But he figured the X-Men could. Also, he doesn't recognize the new X-Men, so he kind of makes what happened. So Cyclops says, all right, everybody go except Thunderbird because he's hurt. But Thunderbird, of course, is like, you can't keep me from going out. Xavier tells him not to argue, so off goes the Blackbird. Wolverine says he's got friends there, and if he hurts them, he's going to carve him into pieces, which Banshee thinks he's killing him, or kidding, but the Air Force arrives. He tells them that the Avengers, he's responding to the Avengers call. They tell the general. General says, "All right, we'll take your help," but he makes a comment here. "We knew that you muties would show up with Nefaria around. I don't trust you, but I guess he has no choice." So he says that Nefaria armed the Doomsmith system, which means that after a certain time in the countdown, it cannot be stopped, and so they need to stop him before then. So this bug lady, I don't really know their names, but she's okay. This bug lady tells Nefaria that someone's approaching. He sees it's the X-Men, and so he throws some missiles at them, and they deflect them, and one of them, though, manages to hit him. And then this portion here of the jet, they're able to escape in it, and Nefaria says, "Nope, not on my watch." Hits this button, which sends some kind of thing that makes it disappear, and the X-Men fall to their death. But we're not done, because classic X-Men had a backup story. Now, some of the stories are filler. Some of the stories do connect to later on. This is a filler one. So this is an adventure of Storm. It's when her and Jean Grey, after this mission, kind of, she goes to New York to visit Jean Grey. And it's always, these stories are really good. They're drawn by John Bolton, who's an amazing artist. They add exposition. They definitely add background. So Jean Grey, she's go to her new apartment, and they're gonna go shopping, and tells her to, get changed. And Storm says, "Okay." And there's a big flash of like lightning, and now she's naked. And Storm doesn't understand why people have to cover themselves up. Notice how the cup is still floating, because she's using her power, because she's a telekinetic and a telepath. So she gives her a dress for her to wear, and Misty Knight is her roommate. Misty Knight is part of the Power Man and Iron Fist, kind of. And Chris Claremont was writing that at that time. So, and off they go. Now, real quick, I want to mention something about John Bolton. I, for the longest time, had a lot of trouble drawing women's noses. I decided I would draw them like him. He basically just puts two nostrils. And I decided, that works for me. So, here are Storm and Marvel Girl after going shopping, but behind them is a kid in a skateboard who pushes Storm and Jean and snatches the purse. Marvel Girl goes after her. Kid makes a run toward the subway, and Storm just can't go down there because she's claustrophobic. And I love this, how it makes it scary for her to go in there. So Jean Grey snatches the kid. However, she wasn't mentally shielded, so when the people all bust out of the subway, she kind of gets overpowered, I guess, mentally, as everybody just, so she lets go of the kid, and goes up, and Storm is just kind of, you see her there, and Jean is like, she's super upset. She's like, "I needed you," and she's like, "Forgive me, I do not understand," and she doesn't know, and she's like, reads her thoughts, and sees that she was buried alive as a child, which makes Storm very angry, because that's an invasion of privacy, and she's like, "How dare you?" Uses her wind to kind of, because she's angry, so she's kind of causing the wind to blow and pushes her up. She uses her telekinetic power, but you can see the storm is brewing, starts to rain. She's like, I can't believe that you did that. I thought we were friends. This is a betrayal. My secrets. You had no right to pry. She says she didn't mean to. She was just angry, and that she just it was it was an accident. She would rather not have her power than lose her as a friend, and she's her friend, and and Storm realizes, oh my God, I overreacted, and takes her down and says, oh, our clothes. She goes, some can be salvaged, other replaced, and she asked her to take her hand, and they're gonna go face the dark together. So good little short story. And then the next one is morning, and if you've ever familiar with the X-Men, you know why that means. But we kind of end with this amazing back cover. This is what I mean about the nose. See, just kind of two nostrils, and that's how I draw my women. So, all right. We're looking at Classic X-Men number 3 from 1986. Beautiful cover by Art Adams. I just want to cover. I want to cover some of Chris Claremont's run in the X-Men, but I do want to cover everything from Giant Size X-Men all the way to the end of John Byrne's run, and then do a couple of things here and there after. So, but I think that the reason I'm doing Classic X-Men is because there's so many cool things. Here's the original cover. Classic X-Men covers the X-Men 95. So here's the original cover. And there's a few changes, and that's kind of what I like from and that's why I'm using Classic X-Men. This was my how I got a hold of these issues, because I the originals, even back then, they were expensive, so and I couldn't afford them, and now who can? But it's still pretty cool. So the most important things for these is read them. So I have them on trades now too. So the X-Men are falling to their death, and Cyclops is wondering what to do. Now, here we have a redrawn image here. So I'm going to show you what the original looked like in a moment here, but essentially, and this is what we're doing Classic X-Men. So this is part of the original, this panel here, but everything else here is brand new. It is for this. And he's basically saying, hey, these aren't the X-Men that I remember. And then he tells him, you guys shouldn't have done it. He says to this dude here that the president will never give to his insane demands. And he says, yes, he will, or I'll unleash Armageddon. And so Catman comes in and he says, everything's ready, but you're bluffing, right? Because if you do that, you're going to end the entire world. And he's like, so what? And so Catman is like worried about that. He's like, the governments will pay no matter what. This is also a new page. This was not on the original. We'll get rid of the X-Men, and Dragonfly here will, whoever gets in their way, she will hypnotize them and make them theirs. So then we go. So here is the new, then where we kind of continue on it from the original. So in the original, here's where I told you, here's Cyclops. And then there was this kind of a recap of everything that had sort of transpired, and then it goes to right here. So that extra page and a half is essentially brand new stuff. So basically Cyclops says Storm and Banshee grab Wolverine and Colossus, and oh my goodness, Nightcrawler teleport. He goes, I can't teleport from here. He goes, from this height, the laws, basically he'll be killed. And then she goes that she can carry him and Colossus without a problem. So Colossus says, "Don't worry, get Wolverine instead." And he says that he'll survive the fall. And Cyclops says, "Don't worry, do it." And then he goes, he grabs Thunderbird and says, "Don't worry." Or he goes, "I can't carry both of you, but I'll come back." And he goes, "That's fine. Just don't be too long." So Colossus is the first to land, and boom, it's a huge crater. And here comes the other cavalry, and uh, Colossus is alive. They're all happy. And Cyclops is like, "Oh, I cannot believe I'm going to die like this." And right before he hits, Banshee gets him. And so, all right, so in this part here, he's going to, they need to get inside, and he says, Nightcrawler, go ahead and get inside. He goes, "I can't do that because I need to visualize. I need to know where I'm going to land or where I'm going to go in." And this sets up because Chris Claremont had sort of done something like that, so he went back. So this is rewritten, and I will show you what the original looked like. So we're gonna go back to a new section here that was not in the original. Dave Cockrum was still alive during this time, so he drew these. And so Banshee uses his voice to create a bit of a radar sonar so that he can find an area where Nightcrawler can go into, and then he teleports inside and then gets in. In the original, he goes, "Hey, can you go in there?" And Nightcrawler's like, "Okay," basically, and went in there. So that whole other sequence was brand new. So he goes from, "Yeah, sure, no problem," to then that other part. So Nightcrawler teleports inside and is hit by Croaker. And he says, "Man, I hit you really hard. I can't believe you got up." He goes, "I'm not just an ordinary man." And says, "And if Fire wants you dead," and he says, "You're going to have to do a better job than that." Keeps calling him Frog, and which of course gets him angry. He says, "I'm a man, not a mutant like you." Of course, he's been genetically altered, so I don't know what he's arguing about, but whatever. And eventually Nightcrawler beats him, and Count Nefarious says, "Man, I can't believe he didn't ask for help." And then, "That's all right. I have other surprises for them." So Nightcrawler opens up. He doesn't see that the frog guy is gone, and Nightcrawler opens, and the X-Men go in, and they're going, "Man, is it hot? It's getting hot in here," and there's a gas. And so Cyclops orders that they smash their way through, and here come the soldiers and shooting at them. The soldiers are hypnotized, and Storm washes the gas away and then is able to get rid of the soldiers at the same time. She says that the soldiers won't bother them anymore. And then we get a brand new page. So this page was just for this. He says that we got Thunderbird here saying he'll take lead. And Cyclops says it's Wolverine is doing it, and to stay with the team. And he's like, "I'm as good as Scout." And then Cyclops reminds him that Wolverine was stationed here. He knows the way around. And he says, "I'm part of this team too." And Cyclops says, "Then you won't mind following my lead." And then, of course, he gets inner monologue because he lost his temper. He hates being boss. And even though Cyclops was right about the Wolverine, he still fought him on that. He wants to contribute to be, to be something, but it's just upset that everything that he can do, the other ones seem to do better. So this page is new, and like I said, it went from then this page to this page in the original. So that page that was in there in the middle was brand new. And as a way to add insult to injury, or is it injury to insult, the ape man is Gort here, lands on Thunderbird and throws him toward Banshee, and then here comes all the animal men, or the Ani-Men, and the X-Men fight. And we can see a little back and forth between them, but the Catman also has his own claws, and Colossus saves Wolverine. So, got a bit of her, like I said, fighting. But eventually the X-Men will be victorious because, hey, this is an X-Men comic book. I like this part, just showing the eye. So they got 18 minutes till that device goes off. So Banshee and Thunderbird out cold, so they're going to go see if they can put a stop to this. Nefaria has locked the system, so they don't seem to be able to stop it. So Thunderbird and Banshee are getting up, sees the mess, and figure they missed the fight. But here's Nefaria then running away, and Thunderbird and Banshee see him, and he's going to escape. And Thunderbird says, "No, you're not," and jumps in. Here's the thing: he's very proud. Proud Star is an appropriate name for him. That's part of the reasons why that stuff was written in there. They wanted to give him more than just that moment. They really wanted to set it up that he just was troubled inside. He wanted to help. And Banshee is like, "Please get off the plane. I can stop him." So Wolverine's like, "We gotta get away," and Cyclops is like, "And go where, man? You got 5 minutes. How far are we gonna get?" Professor X says that he scanned the system mentally. I don't know how you can do that, but hey, it's comic books. Don't overthink it. In the battle with the Ani-Men, the system was destroyed, so it's safe. And to go outside because basically Thunderbird's in danger, and Thunderbird is going after Count Nefaria. He's asking John to please get off the airplane before too late. And here's the part that is kind of the most important part, that he's been a loner his whole life, an outcast, dumped on by everybody, but he's a man, a warrior of the Apache, and he's going to prove it. Banshee's pleading with him to please get off, and it blows up, and Thunderbird has passed, and he was killed in the explosion. And Charles Xavier felt it telepathically. And Banshee's like, I try to get off. He wouldn't. He just says it wasn't your fault. And this can happen to any of us. And it comes with the uniform. And ends the story. But, because it is classic X-Men, there is a backup story. So this takes place, and this is what I like about classic X-Men, that you just cannot get in the original. We get a little story here. Basically, it's the funeral, which we never had anything. These backups are great. I recommend, if you see a classic X-Men issue and you're a fan of the X-Men, pick them up. The first About the first 30 issues had backup stories. After that, it does not. Although some did have great covers by Mike Mignola, so worth it just for that. But here's Jean Grey, and there's a Jean Grey telepathically heard a cry, and the X-Men, it says it's Colossus, and he's like, somebody has stolen Thunderbird's body, and they're like, it's desecration, and so they're gonna call the police. The priest was, and they're like, we'll find him, and then these are his parents, and they're like, we appreciate, but they don't need to do anything, and just to leave him alone, and so they're very hurt. So Wolverine is going to find him, and Cyclops like, Thunderbird's parents asked us not to find the body. He says, then stay. We take care of our own. And Storm says, even though she doesn't like his manner, agrees. So off they go. They're all gonna see what they can do. So he's following the scent, and then here's Banshee, and Banshee's doing his sonic scream. Of course, he is just so upset that of everything that had happened that led to Thunderbird's death. So Nightcrawler's complaining about the heat, but they're all looking. They're kind of remembering certain things about Thunderbird. How he trained, how he was always just trying to be the best, and they want to know why he's just so angry. He just says, everybody here is so great. Everybody here is so much better than me, and he feels like he can't contribute. So then they ask him, why is he staying? And he's like, I don't know. And he says he guesses just because he's got nowhere to go. I love these insights. You just don't get that in the original X-Men. So it's just really cool. So I really do like the classic Storm creates a little storm to try to make him a little better. And then she's also remembering Thunderbird. So basically he goes to her room. So she goes, I didn't hear you. And she says, I wasn't meant to. He's trying to be as sneaky as Wolverine. And she's like, why are you always trying to compete? And he's like, well, he's the best. He's the man to beat. And so he makes, she's like wondering, about his life. And he's like, it wasn't special. I couldn't wait to leave. And I missed it with all his heart the moment, he did. Asked if he has family and friends. He says, family, sure. Friends, and then he questions it. He left them in the jungle, meaning Vietnam. And he says, if there's loved ones, are girls to cherish or kids to raise? And he says, never. So he was really lonely. So eventually, though, we do find that his brother is the one that took the body, and Wolverine had found him. And he finds a box with his some stuff in there, and a picture of him in Vietnam with his friends. And so Wolverine kind of ponders a little bit as well. But then just there's the medal and all that. He leaves, and then He finds the other X-Men. He says, "Let's go. Nothing here. Just a boy laying his big brother to rest the old ways. And he's at peace now." And of course, the brother's like, "Someday you will be avenged." It's going to take a long time, though, because this kid does become Warpath. Warpath, of course, is a member of X-Force. So that's who this kid will be. But it will take a long time before this happens. But of course, it had already happened when Chris Claremont wrote this. So anyway, so classic X-Men. Oh, and here's the original back cover. So this issue had no ads, so everything was cover to cover. And John Bolton, by the way, was the artist of the backup feature. So we're going to look at Classic X-Men from 1986. We're going to look at Classic X-Men number 4. First, we start off with this great cover by Arthur Adams. I bought this right off the rack when I was young. I had just gotten into the X-Men not too long when this came out. I was in middle school, and I had a friend, by the way, Arthur Adams is the penciler, but P. Craig Russell here is the inkier of this cover, and I like how they put it in the back of this little demon thing. So I was not into the X-Men growing up, but a buddy of mine in middle school just loved the X-Men. I was into comic books, so I was like, well, sure. So he gave me a couple of issues of his, and I just fell in love. And this was during the Marvel 25th anniversary, so ended up getting like X-Men, the Mutant Massacre, basically. So that was kind of my introduction. So when Classic X-Men came out, I started snatching them up. So this is the cover to what is in here. It's X-Men 96, and that's what's included in here. So what I like about Classic X-Men is there's background versus in the original, there's this has additional pages, additional dialogue. It's a more updated version. I decided to just go back and do this, and we're going to do the entire run of Chris Claremont all the way to when John Byrne leaves. So we'll be doing X-Men for a while. Here we have our table of contents. Chris Claremont wrote the entire thing, including the supplementary material. John Bolton does the additional story. And then Dave Cockrum was still alive during this time. He passed away from diabetes, but Dave Cockrum also did the supplemental pages that were added to this. And we have a great frontispiece here by Arthur Adams and P. Craig Russell. So, all right, so here we go. Thunderbird has passed, and Cyclops is trying to cope with it. So he goes for a walk. Why he goes walking in his costume, I don't know. Regardless, it's comic books. We won't overthink it. And he's remembering, that he passed away, refused to get off the airplane, and he's feeling guilty because he was in charge. So discharges his optic, just going crazy, and he ends up hitting this thing. Now, the creatures in this issue, I don't believe ever showed up again on X-Men. So this is kind of like a once, or I don't know, maybe it did through Inferno, but I don't remember these demons here or this particular thing. So Cyclops breaks this thing, and he created a whole mess. I guess he's not even paying attention to that thing. He again is feeling guilty that Thunderbird died, and Here's like some kind of energy thing. I think this is meant for the reader because there's no way he would not have noticed. I think this is just a visual clue for the reader that something's up with this thing. So the X-Men are now in the danger room practicing. This Wolverine's a little bit different personality than the Wolverine that we're used to. He's a little bit meaner, a little bit more of a jerk. So Nightcrawler laughs at him. He doesn't like it, so he goes to kill him. Which Banshee says, "Hey, you could have killed him." He says, "Yep, I know." So, this Wolverine during the early days just had a quick temper. And like I say, it was a bit of a jerk. So the X-Men continues, and Professor X is talking to Banshee about Cyclops and how he's concerned. He hears the doorbell and talks about the new housekeeper. So he goes and sends Banshee to answer the door. He hears the name. He goes, she must be an 80-year-old lady. And then he opens the door, and of course it's a younger person. So in the original series, there was no allusion to Moira McTaggart. This was initially her first appearance, but as we know, and if you followed, I have done classic X-Men's 1 through 3 already, so feel free to check them out in the video. So he gave a bit of more of a background on how that she was called in and all that. That's why I like classic X-Men. So now we go here to, I forgot the name of this dude here. I'll find it here. Oh, it's Stephen Lang, Dr. Stephen Lang. He's pretty much working on a project here that's going to remain. I won't try to spoil the surprise, but these are comic books that are almost 50 years old. So, but this guy here is a colonel who wants he's there to give them a report before they approve this project. So, and this is about the destruction of mutants, and it's called Project Armageddon. So, for some reason, people did not like mutants. People that had powers was okay, but people born with powers, so. But it was, the X-Men was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's way of doing the civil rights with black people. So the X-Men represented that. So it just got exaggerated into more. So the Colonel anyway does not want to do it, and says that the project is over, and as soon as he's back in Washington. So, and Stephen Lang doesn't like that, and you can already tell that by this here, you probably already know what's up. So, all right, so this is a new page, 2 new pages actually, this one and the next one, in which Nightcrawler appears and then goes in there and then sees something. I love the eyes. And then everybody else is gonna go out, and they're like, go back inside. And Storm, of course, is naked because, hey. And they're like, why is everybody staring? So Colossus gives her his shirt. And Professor X says, a little bit more discretion, meaning don't be walking around naked. So, and Moira McTaggart and Professor X talk for a little bit here. These new supplemental materials are just great. They just add so much more. I recommend, if you have the originals, that's great. But if you can pick up the classic X-Men, um, between 1 through 25 at least, it really gives you some really cool background on stuff. So McTaggart basically is asking, why did he call her and what does he need? So in the original, it went from the Lang and that foot all the way to here. So those 2 pages, like I said, were not included. So we're at night now, and so some time has passed, and Professor X is introducing Moira McTaggart to all the X-Men. He's going to be taking a vacation, and she's basically there to look after the X-Men. Look at Wolverine just playing tic-tac-toe on the coffee table. So Professor X just basically says everybody needs a vacation, and this is mine. And Banshee's very smitten with her. He's Irish and she's Scottish. So when you see her like this, it's more of a way to for how she speaks. It's not necessary, meaning kind of like how Scottish would sort of talk. But yeah, so anyway, Banshee is asking her out on a date. And while they talk, Professor X asks about Cyclops, which of course, right on cue, boom. Or rather, instead of boom, a zram. So here comes Cyclops. The X-Men help him up. They're like, it's right behind me. And um, Wolverine. I don't know. Sometimes when people, I don't understand certain artistic choices, like just this black blotch right here. I don't get it. There's a lot of stuff when people are um drawing. There's certain marks that they make that sometimes I don't quite get it. I get this. I get why this is black. You know, foreground, background. So I get that. Covered up and all that kind of stuff. But these blotches here, like, why did he put that there? I don't know. Anyway, um, Cyclops let loose a demon named Kirok, and I am pretty sure this dude has never appeared again. So, um, even during Inferno, I just the main demon was somebody else. It wasn't this Kirok. So, anyway, here come the X-Men. They're gonna fight the demon. So this is just a bit of a fight. Not much happens. Not much in the event of a dialogue. Just your typical superhero scrap. And Professor X is going to. They thought they killed him. He comes back, and Professor X is gonna use his mental. I look at Wolverine's eyes like he's frustrated. That's kind of cool. And he's gonna look inside using his mind, and he screams in pain from what he sees in there. And they said that. So sorry. Real quick, she comes through from the armory, which is to me hilarious. The X-Men have an armory, and she comes in with a I don't know what kind of a weapon this is, but it's funny that the X-Men have an armory. And Banshee helps her out. So they need to fix that rock that um Cyclops broke with his a cairn, Karn, I don't know. But he Charles Xavier sends Storm. So she goes out, and all these other demons are basically trying to stop her. So, like I said, they're trying to stop her, and she there's like an energy beam coming from it. And so she remembers um, her past. And as you can see, they're trying to stop her. And this is the reason she's claustrophobic. And uses her powers like with a big massive bolt of lightning to destroy it. And then the demon just dies. And they wondered, if he'll come back. It looks like they once ruled the world and want to rule it again, and hope that this is the last they see. And then we have a one-panel epilogue, and where the colonel was, who was going to stop the mission, everyone died from the crash. And so this concludes the issue. However, because it is classic X-Men, there is a backup story. It's called The Big Dare. Chris Claremont added... this is drawn by John Bolton, by the way. And Claremont added these backups just to give it a little bit more filler, a little bit more of a background. And here Wolverine and Nightcrawler are sort of playing catch. So this is gonna be one where it's pretty cool. You'll see here in a minute. I'm gonna try not to give it away here, but so Wolverine won a bet, and so they're gonna go have a drink in town. Well, Nightcrawler was gonna go get it, and so he uses his image inducer that was from Stark, from Tony Stark, and used it to create, like a way so he could go out in public. And Wolverine says, "Are you ashamed?" And he says, "No, I'm just being practical." Doesn't want to terrorize the people. So he goes out and chooses this image here, and they're kind of just talking about him growing up and in the circus. And he eventually asks Nightcrawler to prove that he's not embarrassed to be who he is. So he turns off the image inducer. Now look at this. Bill Sienkiewicz was here. It's kind of cool. And so he turns it off. And the guy didn't do anything when he sees him. And like this lady, that man's face, he has a tail. And this guy's like, oh yeah, and handsome too. So he's going around talking or walking in public, just people staring, Wolverine smiling. So, and Star Wars in the background. Nobody's being mean or anything, but of course it wouldn't be a good story if we didn't have any conflict. So this guy here was like thought he was wearing a mask. Turns out it's real. And Wolverine's not gonna take it, and then takes off his claws. Nightcrawler stops him, and they teleport. And he says, it's not worth it to. He's at the top of the building, so a little bit of perspective but they're at the top of the building, and basically he thanked them for doing what he did and going into town, and then in a handshake. And the next time we're gonna have a Colossus short story, and then here's the back cover. So hope you liked it. And look at Classic X-Men number 5. I bought Classic X-Men. It was my first introduction to the X-Men when I was growing up. I didn't know who the X-Men were until I met a buddy of mine. This is a cover by Arthur Adams and P. Craig Russell. And he kind of got me into them, and I really fell in love with this. So, this is a reprint of X-Men 97. But the neat thing about classic X-Men, by the way, I have a playlist that you can take a look with um, all the classic X-Men issues so far. My What I hope to do is go all the way to the Dark Phoenix saga. So, um, and that's originally what I wanted to do, but it just I just decided to go with all the supplemental material. So that's why I like to use classic X-Men as opposed to the original. I have the trade paperbacks and stuff, but the classic X-Men gives you supplemental material that is not available in the original. So I rather use this. So classic X-Men was basically Chris Claremont, and well, Marvel asked Chris Claremont to add stuff to his already what he'd already written. So he went back, and Dave Cockrum was still alive at this time. Rest in peace, Dave Cockrum. And he went in there and just added new stuff to kind of make things fit, give it a bit of a, because a lot of these stories were shorter back then, so he wanted to refine it, I guess would be the word. So when we get to a new section, I will be more than happy to tell you what's going on. So the first thing we see here is a splash page of Professor Xavier sort of having a dream. He's got the X-Men here, and then some weird stuff that we haven't seen yet. And here we have our credits. So it's kind of funny. I don't think a lot of people do this, but they do this for dramatic effects in movies and in books and in comic books. So hey, but he's having some kind of dream, some kind of nightmare of like a galactic war, an alien galactic war. So it's almost as if someone was trying to make contact with him telepathically, and then he's looking in there, but he then ends up waking up. So Moira, he gets out of bed, and Moira McTaggart finds him, in the kitchen having tea, and he kind of explains his dreams to her, and she urges him to confide in the X-Men, but he's unsure as to how he can explain to his student his fear. So they may think that he's going crazy. So we change the scenery, and we're here at a Rio Diablo, somewhere in the American desert. And what we have here is Alex Summers, who's Cyclops' brother. He's the mutant known as Havoc, and then Lorna Dane, who is Polaris, also former X-Men. And he's been working as a he's like a doctoral candidate in geology, and she's kind of been playing housewife and feeling that their lives are going, and then she sees this knock on the door. She opens, recognizes who it is, but is shot with some kind of energy beam, and she falls. So this page is new. So this page was not part of the original, and basically Alex Summers is proclaiming his love for Polaris, just screaming it to the heavens. So he's hoping that his brother Scott, Cyclops, feels the same way about Jean Grey, the way he feels about Polaris. But then he wonders if Cyclops allows himself to feel because he has built so many walls around him, and so and he wonders if he's forgiven him for being adopted when he wasn't, because Cyclops ended up growing up in an orphanage. It kind of gets him a little. He feels a little guilty, so he discharges some of the uh, some energy into that little rock and feels bad about it. But he loves the life of not being a hero anymore. So he then hears a scream. This is where it would have picked up. So it would have gone from the page where she was on the floor to this, and that, like I said, that other part wasn't in there. So he hears a scream, and he runs in there and says, "If asks Lorna if she's okay." Um, she says she is, and she wonders. He says he ran all the way from the upper canyon and asks what about what's with the new costume. She then, of course, strikes him and says, it's hers and the powers is hers. And then you see here he's knocked unconscious and there's a leg here. And that person is talking and says, "You did not kill him. Good. He'll be useful." And basically, the objective is to kill Charles Xavier. So now 3 days have passed, and we're at JFK in New York. Professor Xavier is going on a vacation, and so you can see Jean Grey is sort of nagging him. Don't stay out in the sun too long. Be on the lookout for great whites, that kind of stuff. So Jean asks about Banshee and Wolverine, and Professor X says Banshee's spending the afternoon with Mrs. McTaggart, and Wolverine was feeling unsociable. That was, to me, so funny. So they all kind of say goodbye, and he's going to. Oh, and this was Nightcrawler. He's using his image inducer. And you can see as we continue through that all of a sudden Havoc and Polaris are also there. And so Cyclops sees his brother and asks why they're in costume. And Jean senses something and says it's a trap. And then Polaris, of course, attacks at that time. And Cyclops is not very happy with that. They tell Cyclops to get out of the way. They need to deal with Xavier, and Cyclops, of course, says no. The two pilots see this, and they're like, "We gotta get out." And you can tell it's the 70s. The pilot is smoking, and so the airplane is trying to take off here. And you can see in the background those little circles here that Havoc is using his power. And Cyclops says, "Hey, they're going after the professor." And the guy turns off the image inducer, which is, of course, Nightcrawler, and then, of course, Colossus. And so they're, oh, look at that, TWA. They don't exist anymore. It went bankrupt years ago. So Havoc is charging his power, but is stopped by Nightcrawler. But that the Havoc hits the big airplane, but that little airplane gets away. So, and of course, all those people, or no, it was a going routine maintenance. It was empty. So, so they have to add these things because, of course, these are for kids, or rather, they could be also. So, Cyclops says, what are you doing this?" And from behind it says he's following my orders, and it's Eric the Red. And Cyclops says, "You can't be Eric the Red because I was Eric the Red." And of course, they're talking about X-Men 51 and 52, which you can check out on that Marvel fan page and check that out yourself. So the X-Men are going to attack, but Eric the Red dispatches them. And then we have another new page here. So this one here. So he Eric orders Cyclops to stay away, but of course Cyclops hits him with his ray and says he's my brother, and Eric says I'm your master. You will have no will havoc but mine. So he's you can see here, this was added to show that they were under hypnotic control the whole time, because in the original they don't really explain it very well. So here Chris Claremont is trying to make sure that you do understand that this was Eric, or that Havoc and Polaris were under his control. So, and so then we go back to continuing. You can also tell, even though this is the same artist, meaning Dave Cockrum, you can see that there's the art still looks much different here. So Storm has Jean Grey and is thankful that neither Havoc nor Polaris can fly, but that's not quite true, because she can use the gravity waves or something, the electromagnetic waves, to sort of levitate, and she hits Storm, and Jean Grey is falling to her death, and Storm's trying desperately to catch her, and she does. Set puts her down and changes into her costume. So Cyclops basically is saying, "Why'd you do this?" And he says, "I had to. Eric he's in my mind. I'm trying. He can't fight it." So Cyclops shoots him with his eye beams, and of course Havoc reciprocates, and he's feels terrible. He thought he killed him. So he still has enough of his senses, and Cyclops uses that. I like this pose here, just showing how hitting him very hard. Meanwhile, the X-Men are trying to fight Eric the Red, but he seems able to take on them. I always found it funny that the villain is always one person. He's so powerful, he can just beat the crap out of the entire team. So always struck me, Magneto with the X-Men, Doctor Doom with the Fantastic Four. So here Eric hits him and knocks off this other airline, Eastern, who also went bankrupt. I used to fly that when I was a young child, so they were still around. So here Colossus punches Eric, and I don't know what this part is. It's just, you can see the airline here, so it's just I don't know. I think it's Storm using her power and Polaris, but I don't know. It's a convoluted mess there, but that's all right. So, and Storm finally intensifies. I really love this pose here, and Storm wins. And Havoc sees Lorna, of course, hurt, and he tells Cyclops, if she's hurt, I'll kill you, and I'll kill you all. So, and he runs toward Polaris, and now Banshee and Wolverine have arrived, and so Eric says, "Come on, time to go. We'll fight another day." And he takes Havoc and Polaris, and off they go. And Wolverine tells him, blast them, they're getting away. And says, "Oh, during this time, Wolverine was written very different. So he's not the Wolverine that you are sort of used to. He was a little bit more impulsive, a little bit more, I don't know, of a jerk, which Wolverine really isn't a jerk anymore. But he was, he's calling him, "Are you gutless or something?" So you don't see Wolverine doing that anymore. Um, Cyclops hits him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you." And Storm says, "You won't do that, Wolverine. Not now or ever. You'll answer to me." And the X-Men are being watched, but then whoever is watching the X-Men, this is, by the way, you met him in the previous issues. Doctor, oh, I forgot his name. Stephen Lang. Stephen Lang. You can see a Sentinel leg right here. He's watching the X-Men, but somebody else is watching him. So kind of cool. Someone's watching the Watcher. So then, of course, next issue, the Sentinels return. So the part of the reason that Classic X-Men is so cool and why I prefer using it is because not only did it have supplemental art within the main story, there was also a backup feature, and this backup feature features Colossus. It is drawn by John Bolton. It is written by Claremont. So, and it kind of just gives you a little bit more of Colossus, and he sees this someone speaking Russian. That's what these things are for. That it's a foreign language, and he hears it, and she's being kidnapped. So he jumps on and turns into Colossus and makes punches. They shoot at him, but of course that doesn't work because his skin is made out of metal. And picks up the car, and then they run away. And of course, the girl is unconscious in the back. And so he turns back to human, speaks Russian to her, asks if she's okay. He's not one of them. So the people are like, way to go. So, but this is, of course, something always happens, even in these little 8-page backups. So he introduces, and she's a dancer. She in the ballet, so she defected. Um, so she's an artist. So I love how he does the noses, and I try to copy that in my when I draw women. I try to do these very fine nose, almost you can't even see it, just the nostrils. So when I draw, that's how I. So so they get to know each other for a little bit, about Peter's family. She asks him why he's in America, and he says he's a student, and she asks if his parents approve, and she said yes, and she says, I'm not so lucky. So later that night at the Metropolitan Opera House, she is performing a ballet. So people, of course, loved it. He's got his little artist pencil still in his ear. So he's waiting for her, and people had given her flowers, so they're beginning to have a little romance. But you can see this car coming from here. He made her a picture here, by the way. And they're walking, and then, of course, one of the people that from the night before is there, or from the couple nights. So they're here for her, and Peter, of course, is not going to let them. And so they're going to take out a gun, and he turns into Colossus and dispatches the criminals quickly. And they run and says, I doubt they'll bother you again, and changes back. And she's like, oh my God, you're a monster. That's horrible. And, it's that whole mutants are evil and all that kind of stuff that is part of the X-Men thing. So gets used a lot. And even though it's the Marvel Universe and there's plenty of people that have superpowers, I still don't understand. I understand why mutants were used, to represent the black culture and all that kind of stuff, but still, they really lean into that. So she's horrified that he's to learn that he's a mutant, runs away. How can someone made out of steel have have a heart? And you can see his eyes pretty touching. I mean, he's ready to cry and picks up the drawing. He just sits there for a long time and rips the drawing and says, "You're wrong." So, and of course, this is the back cover by Bolton. So, all right. So, hope you enjoyed it. We'll be hopefully getting this all the way through when John Byrne um, leaves the title, and then we'll be doing sporadic issues. I'm not after John Byrne leaves. I'm not doing every single issue, but I'm gonna try to do every single issue until John Byrne leaves the X-Men. He hasn't even shown up yet, so we still have a while. So, all right, like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.